was a motivator because it sort of gave kids, like Alice in Wonderland. You know, I mean, not Alice in Wonderland, The Wizard of Oz. Right? You can have courage, but when your peers give you, I don't remember, what is it that you get for having courage? Subway, some kind of badge. It's a different thing. It's a different thing, and especially for kids who think that nothing they do counts. That suddenly they have a skill that maybe their friends think is cool, but like what adult or teacher would. Suddenly they get they get a badge, they get a heart or whatever whatever that badge thing is in the Wizard of Oz. That certifies they've got a real skill. That's a pretty big motivator. And again, we found it in working with the kids, and then we decided to make it a big initiative. Almost all of our competitions grow out of stuff that we're seeing and working with kids in grassroots communities. And then we say, let's try it, and we run it as a competition and see what we can do. Yes, and then over here, yeah.
As an educator, I deal with a range of IQ levels, and so how does this play for people who kind of were born with the short end of the stick? You know, basically we've got students who are, 75 and they're expected to do the college prep course and so...
Fantastic for differently abled kids, which I am. I mean, I earned my PhD at an insanely young age. I knew I was a troublemaker. I knew I'd been kicked out of school 4 times. I knew I could barely take a standardized test. Got C's because I either got an A or an F on every test I took. Had no idea I was 1% of dyslexic until a friend of mine took her kid in to be tested. One of my mentors when I taught at Michigan State took her kid in to be tested, and I said, wow, Andrea reads the same way I do. She reads lying down on her side with a cover over her head. And her mom, who figured it out long before I did, said, why don't you come take the test along with Andrea, just see what you... And I was like, whoa, I got a perfect score. Amazing. Well, finally. I think one of the things that's cool about badging is everybody's great at something. And it allows you to have a real life credential. When your whole life you've had a lot of F's and a lot of failure, it allows you to mount a portfolio in whatever area it is that you do very well. And finding out what that is and that it's worthy of a portfolio. Not weird, but worthy of a portfolio. That's kind of an amazing thing. For me, it would have been math. Especially calculus. I would have just gone crazy. And I don't think I ever got above a D in math. But would get to math camps. I would prizes to get to math camps, but couldn't do math the way other kids did. It would have been amazing to have something where I could do problem solving and get some kind of reward. Oh, I'm seeing a lot of head shaking. I think I'm in a room with fellow differently learning people, which is true, right? I mean, coder community especially is a community where we learn in a different way than some people learn. We learn by doing, we learn by making mistakes, we learn by forking, we learn by all kinds of things. All right, someone, yes.
Yes. First, an observation. It sort of sounds like what you're hoping will emerge initially is an ecology of badging entities that we want to keep. We want it to be an unregulated ecology. Yes. We don't want anybody setting themselves up as arbiters or certification mills for the institutions that am I understanding that correctly?
Yes. If it turns into just another, what is that? Education, ETS. I will have wasted a lot of time and effort. Yeah, and a lot of people, not just me, lots of people.
So we want to keep it a Wild West for a while.
Yeah, and as much peer-to-peer as possible. Yeah.
I have 2 questions. I have a million questions, but I'm going to try to simplify these 2. One, when you're building, you build a model of the badging system and the model of this open peer teaching. What are the bellwethers or the indicators that you have? I guess you have sort of a set of mental criteria or rules of thumb about when it's working, when it's happening, and more importantly, if you got alarm bells that let you know, this situation is lapsing into one of the the evil things that it's not supposed to be, because a lot of times good intentions do that.
Absolutely.
And a lot of people in those, some people will always be gamers who are gonna figure out a way to abstract whatever your
Absolutely.
novel approach is into something that can be turned into checkpoints.
Right.
I guess my other question would be, and this is probably beyond your remit at this time, have you given any thought to how this badging ecology is going to help or hinder the resourcing of education? How do mentors or teachers, if we totally decompose the system, you're a teacher, you still gotta pay your child support, or you still gotta get your kids through college. Teachers, mentors, whatever the new teaching role becomes, have you sort of expanded the idea of how this will resource education in general?
So those are like huge questions that we all think about a lot. They're profound questions. Let me just answer some of them. People will try to screw it up. I don't know anything cool that people try that somebody doesn't try to screw it up. And I don't think you can innovate or experiment being afraid of how somebody will misuse what you're doing again. You can try to be as responsible and careful as possible, but you better believe the VCs are swarming at this point, right? People are saying, oh, maybe this is, prisons didn't make enough money, so now we're getting into privatizing education, let's do badges, right? So, and it's the same people, the Blackwater people do the standardized tests, literally the same people that were responsible for Blackwater, made money with Blackwater, are responsible for the biggest standardized testing operation for public schools in America. So, it'll happen, right? That's
The system will be subverted, and gaming the system is human. I honor gaming.
Sure, we survive by gaming, and we try to do it in as good a way as possible. So it will try to be subverted, and I hope it doesn't happen. I hope it's not an evil thing that happens, because I really think the present system is so bad that I really hope we've got a viable alternative here.
But you don't have enough experience when you've seen some of these badging experiments sort of go south. You're starting to develop a smell for when people, inadvertently or advertently sort of move away from the concept.
No, actually, I've seen the opposite. We have a group in St. Louis that were doing badges for vets, and they thought the vets would want badges that looked as much like ranks in the Army as possible, and started being very rigid about the badges. And we pushed them a little and said, what if you let the vets decide, we're coming back, the unemployment rate of 18 to 20, vets under 25 is just appalling. And many of them don't have education, and really, but they've learned skills, they've learned incredible skills. So we said, what if we let the vets themselves come up with systems? And that's kind of how that's evolving. And at one of our last meetings, the first employer had gone to Badges for Vets and said, wow, this set of skills, and they didn't map onto ranks or military job descriptions. They were different kinds of things, not quite like the happy person who keeps everything going, but some of them were characterological like that, like the person who kept our troop just going strong in a terrible situation. People started getting jobs. So the Veterans Administration has pulled way back and is letting the vets themselves design the system. So that's an example that was going in a way that I would have said, oh boy, we don't need that. And in fact, a good result made it go the opposite direction. You asked another huge, teachers?
Resourcing.
Public school teachers are so freaked out by so many rules and regulations and end of grade testing and Common Core standards and and especially like if your kids do bad on tests, like New York State has adopted a system where if your kids do bad on the end of grade test, then every educator knows only tests about 20% of the actual content, plus it's terrible for method, terrible for differently abled kids, is a terrible demotivator for learner, et cetera, et cetera. If kids don't do well on those tests, you get your salary docked or can actually be fired. That's So there's so much going against teachers that when I talk about badging with teachers, I tend to get a real blank wall. So the only thing that works is if, when I do a lot of workshops in schools, when we actually go in and invent a system together. And I say as little as possible. You know, Duke Professor, MacArthur Foundation, even some grants from the Gates Foundation, that's not gonna work. But if I just sit quietly and say, let's try this, and people actually start working on it, it just seems, people get it, that that this could be some hope and something a little more flexible and allow them to be what teachers should be, which is creative and inspiring and knowing their kids well enough to know which interests they have and say, hey, why don't we try to make rockets for a while?
Well, I would hope that teachers could just opt out of the system. I'm not really concerned with resourcing the system. You know, you're a drum teacher, you're a violin tutor. I mean, the badging system, what I'd like to see the model move toward is that if you're a mentor, hell, you just, you know, you do what they did 500 or 1,000 years ago, you teach.
Exactly.
Maybe a family hires you to teach their kids, or
Right.
and if you're a coder, you just, and you pair program a lot, and every guy start realizing, I want to pair program with this guy. People learn, and that it could work like that, but you have to resource. I'm wondering if that implies for you alternative ways of resourcing. But we'll let it for there. I think I'm
Yeah, and the answer is yes.
Okay, first off, actually a question for him. What does resource mean when it's used as a verb?
Well, I'm trying to avoid that evil term that people in the business world like to use, which is called, how do you monetize this? Because as soon as I say, how do you monetize this, part of me loves that. I'm a bookkeeper. I'm all about keeping the books. I don't think money is evil. I used to, but I still think that when I say resourcing something, that's a euphemism for for what people used to call monetizing the system. It's a way of acknowledging that maybe there's a way you can have a world where it's not all about dollars, or if it is about dollars, it's not about profit.
So basically about how to make money on it without being evil about it.
Well, that's one way of putting it. Because I think evil is just as an abstract and figurative concept, but yeah.
Okay. All right, and now a question actually for you. So one thing, like, if the way you're talking about badges, like, once this thing gets going, you could easily accumulate hundreds of badges, and like, so.
If that were your inclination, I knew kids, I hated badges as a kid. Did that?
Yeah.
I hated it. But I knew kids who like had every Girl Scout badge you could have.
Yeah, well, and so like my question is like, say badges are taken on, and like I send my resume to a company, and they look at my badge portfolio, and they're like, and I've got like, and they see 200 badges, and there's like one for computer science degree at State, one for release a rap single, one for learn how to get myself a badge.
Hire that guy, yeah.
And so the question is like, how do you envision people sorting through the badges to figure out, okay, which of these are really useful for what I want to know about this person?
Yeah, the cool part is, with badges literally on the first level are instant icons of feelings. So if I see C++, Python, platinum rap record,
Good singer.
you know, I might say, whoa, I've not seen those badges before. I'm gonna check out this guy, right? You know, that would, so, or if I'm of a different disposition, I say rap music is evil. No way, he's gone, right? So, but the whole point about badges is it's your backpack and it's your ecosystem. So when you're applying for a job, you don't have to put all your 100 badges up. You can choose your 50 you want.
Okay, so like
In other words, you own your identity. That's the part Mozilla wants to teach people. You can own your identity. You don't lie, but you own your identity. So if you're applying for a job, you say, here are the 10 badges that are relevant to this job. And you could, and your employer wouldn't put all 150.
Yeah.
Right? You know, for this job, you say, this is my identity. I get to choose what I think is the best for this job. So take a look at these 10 badges. And then someone clicks on those and say, boy, this is a perfect fit. Or he doesn't get our culture at all. Whoa, this is a really bad fit, right? But you do that with a resume, but there's a huge amount. I mean, as somebody who spends a lot of time reading resumes, I mean, it's just so much verbiage and so hard to figure out what somebody's past is. And, you know, every week somebody turns out not to have had the credentials they say. Because who reads all that stuff, right? It's easy to do.
And also another thing about resumes is like, there's a lot less things that you can put on a resume. Because like usually, I mean, like that's university, like a degree you got or work you did, and those are like multi-year things. And so you kind of want to fluff it up. So I guess like one thing that can be good about badges is like making it more possible to be honest and more selective about the image you want to present.
Yes, and thoughtful. Yeah, exactly. Like this is because you're thinking about, it's interactive, right? In the sense of this is the opportunity. These are the skills I have that work with those opportunities. So you probably don't care about my platinum record in rap music, right? So maybe I won't use that here. That might count against me. So having that self-consciousness about your identity, I think is a really good thing. And I think that's the sort of teacherly part of this is, especially Mozilla feels like because of Facebook and because of the promiscuity with which we're always communicating online, people aren't necessarily aware of their identity in a precious sense, and how you can curate your identity now.
So this is leading to a question I had about the Facebook problem. So let's say I'm earning, you know, like a TriLUG nerd badge or something for being here, and then later on tonight I earned the TriLUG Super Chugger badge. You know? so then I go use this, you know, at a job interview or something like that. How do I make sure that the Super Chugger badge doesn't really show up on there? You know, like the whole problem with.
You get to choose what badges you want to be on your the material that you put in. You know, you can curate your own backpack and show that. You don't have to put the Super Chugger badge in that situation.
So you have several backpacks.
You can have several backpacks, and you choose, like in this situation, which 7 badges do I think are relevant to this job? And which 7 badges might be relevant to other people, but not to this job.
So is it kind of like Google Docs where you can kind of decide on who can see what? Is that how that works?
Yeah, that's a good analogy.
Since it's peer reviewed, you don't have an organizing body where somebody can check up on you.
In some cases you do, in some cases you just have the data that's supplied by your peers, or in Barry's case, that he supplies by himself. And I think that's a great example, because if I click on your badge, I find out that it's a badge awarded for understanding badges, making badges, you know. And I think about whether I value that, because there's value on my side too, I value that, or if I devalue that. I personally, since I believe in initiative and innovation, would look at that and think, that's really cool. I think you had your hand up first. Yeah. Or did we talk, you already had, go for it.
If you're showing badges like a resume, do you know if there's optimal or maximum numbers and not sort of overwhelm the...
You know, we're not there, we're not far enough along in the process yet, but on Stack Overflow, you know, people will have, I would say, I think 5, 6, 7, 8. Is that true? Is people,
Yeah,
are people who use it?
People deal with lists longer than.
Yeah, it's like, who wants to,
Yeah.
you know?
That's why
It's like too long,
phone
writing
numbers
too
are
long a
10
job
pages
letter. You know, so job letter is 4 pages long, I don't even want to read it.
Or with Khan Academy, you can earn tons of different badges, but then you pick the 5 you want to show when you're answering a question.
Right, because that the curating is itself tells somebody something about your personality.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You know, in other words, that's why I like this in the sense of you're curating yourself. If I have 1,000 badges and I'm applying for a job, I don't want to put 1,000 out there. I want someone to see the 5 that really represent me. And my ability to make a choice is also characterological.
And there's also like you get level badges, so like you'll get one after you answer 100 questions, one after you answer 200 questions. Obviously, if you got the ones that you got 200 people.
I think you had a question first and then you can back.
Mine's really quick.
Okay.
What about for younger kids, like 13-year-olds and younger?
We started this with kids, the first ones we saw at the New Media Center, we were doing this with 7, 8, 9 years old. They were little kids. We started with little kids and high school kids. We started a couple of schools in New York, a really successful one. Chicago's, we're working on it, called Quest to Learn schools, where the entire school, most of the kids were kids that were different learners. The entire school is based on game principles, and in a quite sophisticated way. Like, part of the game principles is writing a narrative. Who wrote the first? Let's read Homer. So you've got it's a sixth middle school. Let's divide. What's a narrative? How are mathematical problems like games? Let's learn algebra. So and we use badging systems at that school, as well as it was a New York public school system, unionized teachers. End of grade tests. We also did tests in that school, but we had a badging system that was parallel to that.
Is the system actually peer-to-peer? It seems like this would be a very good web of trust signature system.
Yeah.
Is that what it is now?
The ideal ones are peer-to-peer, but not all of them are. But that is definitely a way you can do it. Yes.
So is there integration?
Look out on that. Under the hood, it's doing kind of web of trust like things where it's all using like JSON signatures or something like that, where all the badges are signed. That way you don't have to worry about your host going off. So that's all done in the metadata.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
That does sound like a great motivational tool. But as far as job searching, one of the main interests I would have as a hypothetical potential employer would be trying to identify who are the really bad candidates, not just who are the really good candidates.
Say again. I couldn't hear the last part of that.
Who are the really bad candidates, not just the really good candidates. And so, would badges have any way of trying to handle that?
The badging system, all the badging systems I know don't give negative marks. All they do is give positive ones. So if you apply for a job using badges as a system and you've only got like one badge, that should tell the world a lot. But I think that's partly because the whole peer-to-peer thing, the trolling, flaming possibilities can be high. So you only award points when somebody has earned those points.
Okay.
It's a different system.
Thanks.
And I just read maybe 700 letters of applications for a job. And it's a single bad recommendation. I know some of those 700. They're not all good, but people are very afraid because of litigiousness. Because of libel suits and all kinds of court cases to say anything bad about someone. So you have to figure out the code. Like, I remember friends saying, I once read in a tenure case, I read a letter from